All right. Welcome to End Hype. I've got a great treat for you today. So we're gonna get into some discussions about your brand and your business system and get in nitty gritty. But before I introduce Mike Young, so he can blow your mind, a little bit of housekeeping, right? You're gonna get some great philosophical answers and some tactical answers and some insights in this episode. So do me a little favor, help out a friend, share this to your Facebook page, share it on your LinkedIn stream, wherever you're watching this, share it out so you're not just hoarding all this good information to yourself, okay? That's how we grow this End Hype movement. We're taking information from the best sources and we're putting it out there so we can all grow together. But that's enough nonsense from me. Mike, what's up, my man?
Kelly, how are you? It's a pleasure to be here, and I just want to say thanks for having me on. We've swum in the same circles for quite a while, and so it's nice to actually put a face to a name, you know?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, we definitely we know a lot of the same people, and your name continues to pop up, and I've seen the good work that you've done. So it's fantastic to get you on End Hype. But just so other people have a frame of reference, who is Mike Young? What's the story of Mike?
You know, I think, I'm an entrepreneur, and I spent the first 23 years of my life thinking I was going to be a pro baseball player. I really didn't have any plan B. Like it was baseball or nothing, so school was just a means to an end to play more baseball to me. And so I ended up going all the way through Division I college, ended up not making the pros. And that was kind of I would say it's my first ego death. It's like you have this vision of yourself and your life. And then when things clearly aren't going to go as planned, you have to course correct and adjust. And I ended up going into the mortgage business. It was an extremely popular business, I would say, at the time. It was in the late 90s. People were very successful at a very young age. I had a friend in the business, and I had some good success. Ended up starting my own company between 2003 and 2008. We grew it from scratch to a couple hundred employees and 10 plus offices. And that collapsed in 2008. Went from liquid millionaire, kind of had it all, like had the house, had the cars, had the wife, had the kid, had all this stuff that people think that you're supposed to have that are going to make you happy. I was miserable and not happy at all. So it was this conflict in my mind of, I did everything I was supposed to. I went to school and did all the things. Why am I not happy? And the crash of 2008 was actually a blessing in disguise. It stripped me of everything. It took me from liquid millionaire to a couple $100,000 in debt in less than 6 months. And it didn't feel great at the time, but it was a freeing experience for me. It really forced me to sit down for the first time in my adult life and say, okay, what am I really doing here? What do I want? And that's where kind of I feel like my entrepreneurial journey really began, even though I've always been wired like that. I just had to kind of figure it out. I had that dream of, wouldn't it be nice to travel the world and work with who you want and have money just magically appear in your bank account every day? Wouldn't that be sweet? It was a hell of a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I'll tell you that much.
Wow. So this is really interesting. I love this story for a couple of things. And one is I'm a huge believer in begin with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. And there's something about cultural conditioning where people they don't ask, what do I want? Like, why am I starting a business? So it's refreshing to hear from someone that actually ran a successful business. Hey, you didn't really ask what did you want? So a lot of people start their business and they hit 6 figures, maybe low 7 figures, and they realize that instead of designing freedom, they've built a jail.
Yeah, for sure.
They have a business that they hate. They're selling something they don't like to people that they don't care about, and it prevents them from growing. But that's super interesting that you built a big business, and then it took it took that going away for you to then kind of ask why.
Yeah, and I would just say that time at that time when I was younger in my 20s and stuff, I kind of was of the belief that if I have the money and I have the stuff and I have that does equal freedom and that equals fulfillment. And I just found for myself that that's not the case. It was like what I have now is everything's in alignment with me. And so I did kind of take the time during that period of my life to really sit down and try and get clear. Because it's the most frustrating question in the world when somebody just says, "What do you want?" and you can't answer it.
Yeah.
And so I took a lot of time. It took me a couple of years, but I really got clear on what do I want? How do I want this thing to be structured? And it wasn't from a niche or a tactic or a tool or a strategy standpoint. It wasn't that specific. It was more like, how do I want to feel? How do I want my life to be like? Do I want to be tied to the phone and getting 400 emails a day like I was in the mortgage business? Or do I want more flexibility and freedom than that? And so I got really clear on kind of the ethos of the vision. And then what I had to do is kind of start taking blind action in the marketplace to figure out what was going to be the mechanism and what's going to be the strategy and the tools that I use to get there. Because those things, they're like shovels and screwdrivers and golf clubs. You can buy those things anywhere, but I would much rather have Tiger Woods swing. Maybe not his swing now, but I'd rather have his swing and his mindset than I would his golf clubs or his golf balls.
Right. That's interesting. How else do you see that impacting your decisions? When you say, I want to protect my time, I want to protect my energy, I want to achieve these outcomes. How does that work for you? Like, what's your process?
Yeah, I think we make decisions based on our value structure, like what we are focused on and moving towards. We tend to get, as long as you don't quit. That's why we have these crazy things like satellites and trips to Mars and all those things. Somebody focused on it and just refused to quit until they figured it out. Most people quit, when it becomes difficult and challenging when you're doing anything for the first time. But I would say that my value structure was misaligned when I was younger. It was, my decisions were based on money. Like, can I get this sale or can I get this thing? And when I realigned my values, like, is this a client that I would enjoy working with? Is this somebody I could have a relationship and a beer with and have some fun through this experience? Does this add more time to my family and my friends? Or does it take away time? Does this take away time from my individual freedoms, or does this add time? And so my filtering mechanism is like everybody's. It's based on your values. And when I realigned those things in my brain and started making decisions based on time and energy and how I felt, I started making a whole lot of very, very smart business decisions that didn't feel like it at the time. It felt like I was just saying no to everything. Because a client would come and they'd like, "Hey, can I give you $5,000 to do this?" But it would, maybe that would have me spending every day, and they wanted direct access to my cell phone all the time or whatever it was. But if it didn't align with my top values, I had to say no to it. And that was a pivotal change for me, because everything started to compound. And then my life kept getting better and I couldn't figure out why. But it was because of that one little shift of making your decisions, every decision based on your value structure.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Mike, we're like,
it blew my mind.
We're insanely aligned on this. And this is something that I'm working on for myself and my companies constantly. But it's something that I had to look at and say, hey, I'm working really, really hard for these people, for these clients or like this business. And if I ask myself, what do I want? And I look at this, I just use the classic 3 split of wealth, health, and connection or happiness, however you want to split that. And I'm like, my mental health, right?
Yeah.
Right. My physical health was just stress. And like, is this contributing to me becoming the person that I want to be and living the life that I've said, this is my goal. And I want to be this person. I want my life to look like this in 10 years, 5 years, 1 year. Is this moving me closer to that, or is it moving me farther away from that? And I think the universe kind of like tests you out. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
here's
there's
this
no
thing. It
doubt.
looks like an opportunity, but it's really just more of the same garbage that will keep you stuck.
Yeah, and I mean it's like life, the old Buddhist principle, life is suffering, and you're going to get a tremendous amount of resistance as you're doing anything that you want to move towards. There's going to be obstacles in your way. And that's really what led me to doing what I do. It was being so frustrated and not getting what I wanted for so long, spending all this money trying to become somebody other than who I was, or whatever it was. It was spending all this money on books and courses and seminars and masterminds and all this stuff, ultimately to realize you can kind of have it now. It's like, basic manifesting is be, do, have, right? It's like, you just have to be the person and do the things that person you say you want to become would do.
Yep.
And then everything begins to materialize from there. And so, the analogy I always use is like Forrest Gump, right? I could buy the tracksuit, I could buy the shoes, I could buy the Apple Watch, I could buy the Fitbit, I could buy all this stuff, or I could just start running. And it was when I figured that out that everything began to change. And to align with what you just said, it's when I started figuring out how human beings worked and psychology and really took a deep dive at some of that stuff, it all began to click. It's like our perceptions and our motivations are directly tied to our actions and our emotions. Mm-hmm. And so I was even talking to my wife about this last night. I was just like, it's kind of, I feel a little bit crazy how self-aware I am right now, but everything that you do during the day is either giving you energy or it's dragging your energy. It's either positive or negative emotions. And so if you can get to the place where you can almost monitor that from outside, I just stop doing things that drag my energy and I keep doing things that give me energy. That's as simple as I can make it.
Wow. Yep. I love that. Yeah. This is one of those topics where I talk to a lot of engineers and a lot of, like traditionally smart people who, when you really dive in deep on this side of things, on the emotional awareness or their own personal feelings, their desires, and even just on the business side, they're dumb. Everybody's smart at one thing and dumb at another thing. But this is one of those pieces that sounds woo-woo, right? At first it sounds like, oh, this is fuzzy. And then when you get into it, you realize how tactical it is and how it powers everything. In business circles, you might call this like best practices, right? Or business process modeling, right? It's like, this is how a really great company has implemented this strategy, and this is how they choose and evaluate opportunities. And here's the book, right? We've created this standardized process and you can memorize it. But then for some reason in our own personal things, we don't really look at it the same way. It's like, well, what's working for you? What are you trying to do?
I think it's cool that you mentioned that, because like I always use that word woo woo, or you say manifesting, and all of a sudden people envision incense candles and, me in a bathrobe somewhere. And it's like, it wasn't about that. I was addicted to efficiency, actually. And it led me to this stuff because, like, I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, like within 6 months of it coming out, originally. And I just became fascinated with how can you pull the levers in this game, in this entrepreneurial game, because there's a lot of levers to pull. Like, how can you manipulate the environment so that everything aligns with you? But that wasn't my language pattern back then. I just wanted to make more money and be more efficient, spend more time with my family and friends. And I was always looking for efficiency, but the ultimate efficiency is, well, I would just say recognizing that it's all one. Like, there's no separation. This thing like life work balance, that's just an illusion. It's all the same thing. It all ties together. This magic arrival date of becoming somebody new, that's an illusion too. And that's why I mentioned is like, it's so important to understand that your perceptions and your actions and your emotions tie together, because your perceptions can be wrong. And that's something to know for people, is like, you can look at all those little illusion graphs that you see where it's like this circle and this circle are the same size, but they've orchestrated them in a way where one of them looks bigger. Our brains are tricky creatures. Our nervous systems are always trying to fool us. And so you have to perceive the world in some way and get clear on what you want. And then you have to be able to manage and watch your emotions on, because really that's what it comes down to. Positive emotions are telling you that you're moving closer to the thing that you value most. And negative emotions say that you're moving away from the thing that you say you value most. And so once I got clear on that, the business stuff, the strategy, tools, and tactics that we were talking about before we started recording, that stuff all emerges and is so simple. But that's where people get trapped. The market is set up to pitch you all this stuff, the quick fix, that if you buy my thing, you'll arrive. If you use my strategy or my tool or my tactic, this is going to fix your life, and it's going to do it fast and easy with no work. And we buy into that crap because that's what we want. We're hardwired to want it fast and quick and easy. But it's a trap, and it's a trap that cost me a couple $100,000 in almost a decade of my life.
Wow. So for everybody that's watching on the replay, I want you to pause it. And I want you to rewind that piece, because we talk about end hype. It's like no fluff advice right there. And there it is. It's like, you want to break this down really simply. Mike just masterfully put that together, right?
I would say like, I call this meta level mastery of the entrepreneurial game, but it's like, it's a pyramid essentially. And it's actually an upside down pyramid. It's like at the top, everybody's talking strategies, tools, and tactics, the quick, easy fix, the arrival. But below that are what I would call the foundations. And those are the things the staples that make any business work. You know, it's authority and positioning and copy and offer and these things that you're not going to get away from. And if you have the foundation set and you have the strategies, tools, and tactics, and your business still isn't working, the bottom level of the pyramid is personal resistance. There's something blocking you. There's a past trauma. There's a relationship in your life right now that's dragging you down or trying to hold you back. And so if you have the foundations built and you have the strategies, tools, and tactics, and it's still not working, you've got to figure out what that personal resistance is.
Wow. That's amazing. We'll have to jump on another call, because when you see what I'm doing and what you're talking about, you're going to be like, wow. And I think, we've got to have an in-depth conversation about that. But because
I think you and I are the same. We could talk about it for hours, but then people would fall asleep with our voices on this podcast, you know.
but so you take this, and these are hard fought lessons learned. This is what I really love about this. And then boom, you're offering this right on your site. Click, and you'll talk to people about their brand and their messaging, or you'll talk to them about what they're actually doing as a business, and you'll work with them, so maybe they don't have to lose a couple $100,000 in a few years.
I mean, I found the fastest way to help people is just to help people. You know, I mean, it sounds cliche almost, but it's the fastest way to shortcut the trust cycle for sure. Because this world is a noisy place, you know, with 7.8 billion of us, all of us are wildly unknown. You know, I have this slide when I speak in public, but it's 9 people on the slide with their names on it. And I say, how many of you know all 9 of these people? And I've never had somebody raise their hand. All 9 of them have more than 50 million followers. And so it's mind blowing, because we're all wildly unknown. And so you have to control that perception game, and you have to be able to get known in some way. If you don't have 50 million followers, or if a million followers is still 0.0013% of the marketplace, you know? So it's like, if you're going to be wildly unknown, you have to get very good at controlling the perception, because otherwise the strategies, tools, and tactics, they'll never work. They'll either work inconsistently at best, or they'll fall on their face. And then you go to blame the product. You're like, well, it's ClickFunnels' fault. It's ManyChat's fault. It's whatever that tool you bought that didn't work.
Yeah.
It's because you don't have the foundation set for the business. And so you're not controlling the perception of new people as they come into your business. And if you don't have positioning, if you don't have authority, and you don't have kind of a business image set up to where your story is not credible and it's not believable, people don't waste the time these days to figure you out. They're gonna move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And it's so contextual as well, right? Because I tell people like this is, I'm the same person, but if I'm going to go to the gym, I wear gym clothes. If I'm going to go to a wedding, I wear a suit, right? I'm not a different person, and I'm not putting on airs or being a bum in another situation. I am the best version of myself for the context that I'm in right now. And people want to be, one, they want to be homogenous, not a complete person. But two, this lets us know that we like the world is pretty diverse, right? So if everybody knows you as one thing, it's hard for them to know you as another. And maybe that's good. But like I run in the startup world circles, right? And there's a whole group of people there that maybe they cross over. Like you mentioned, Tim Ferriss, like maybe they cross over to personal development circles. There's people in personal development circles that are massively popular that no one in the other circle knows who they are, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, can I be an authority in both of those spaces at the same time? Probably not. Like, you know, what's the best and most appropriate version of myself to achieve what my ends are, which mine are to basically help people grow their product business. It's like, how can I be credible? Or does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, and you mentioned mental health earlier. I mean, part of, like, I just launched yesterday or the day before. It's an idea I've had on my mind for a long time. But I just launched the Association of Mental Health and Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs. And it was just a need I saw in the marketplace, because when you're going through and you're buying strategies or courses and all this stuff, and it's not working for you, and you actually are trying to become the best version of yourself, it can be very isolating. It can be a lonely experience. It can be depressing. You can have moments where you feel like you're not good enough, strong enough, smart enough, pretty enough, whatever enough. And it is all kind of an illusion. You just have to find people that understand the game, that have maybe done some things that you haven't done yet for yourself, and surround yourself with them, hire them as a coach, as a mentor, as a guide. If you can't do that, you can do what I did in the beginning. You can kind of create virtual mentorships. There was a part of my career back in like 2008 where my feed was just, Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, like if you looked at my Facebook feed at the time, it was just filled with what I wanted to see. And I was essentially brainwashing myself. But I wanted to surround myself with people that had already done something I was trying to do. Yep. And I didn't want to listen to anybody else. I had periods in my life where I stopped listening to my parents, like that is, I love my parents. They want the best for me, but they had no knowledge or skill set in the entrepreneurial world to coach me on anything. So their opinion literally did not matter when it came to becoming a successful entrepreneur. It was just like, you have to kind of figure out all these little mental tricks that work for you, and everybody's different. But I mean, I think going back to how we started the conversation is like, what do you want? That's a good starting place. If you can say, this is what I want, then you can begin to map it out a little bit.
Did you find that your social circle changed, or who you spent time with changed as you went through that process as well?
Yeah. And it's hard. It's a hard change, because what you'll find, this conversation is great because my brain kind of fires on a lot of different things at the same time, but it's just like, we're all kind of, our genes and our biological wiring, is like, it's pretty set. You know, we're afraid to die. We don't like to be socially judged. And so as you begin putting yourself out there, moving towards something, your family and friends are sometimes your biggest anchors, I would say. It makes people that are closest to you feel uncomfortable when they see you progressing towards something that's maybe out of their comfort zone. And maybe it's always out of my comfort zone too, you know, starting a podcast or writing a book or my first event. Like, all these things are outside of your comfort zone the first time you do them. And a lot of times your social circle, that makes them so uncomfortable, they actually try and drag you back, or they start saying things that aren't true. And they're kind of like, I would say, talking shit about you. Oh, he thinks he's so fancy. He thinks he's so cool. Look at him. Oh, he wrote a book. Good for him. And you have to just realize that's human nature, but it's a painful part of the process. They're either gonna support you, and your best friends and the people closest to you will support you. I would just say that you have to realize what makes people like true friends. It's like they will listen to you when times are really, really bad, and they will care for you and they'll empathize with you, but they'll also support you when things are going really, really well. And you just have to be a little bit cautious as you go through this game of who you share that information with, because what I've found, at least in my experience, is 90% are not, they don't want you to become the best version of yourself, and they don't actually want the best for you, because it makes them feel lack. It makes them feel bad about themselves because they're maybe not going after something that they want in their life.
Yeah, or there's not like a structure in place to make some kind of conversation, or there's no map of that, right, in what they're doing. So
yeah. And I would say it's not like I'm not better than anybody, right? I'm human too.
it's just not.
I think we all do it. You know, we all see things that are like, and we get a little bit jealous, you know, or we get a little bit envious or whatever. And anytime that emotion kicks off for me, if I can feel myself being envious or jealous, I really just take the time, like, why do I feel that way? Like, what am I missing that makes me feel that way? And when you can realize you're not missing anything, and you can kind of heal from you know, your childhood and people telling you to sit down and shut up your whole life. You know, when you can heal from that process and you don't need anything, you don't need validation or acceptance from anyone, you can, like, one of my best friends, I would consider a semi-competitor in the niche. Had a $300,000 month, and like sent a message like, you know, hell yes, like, congratulations, whatever. And that's a rarity these days, that entrepreneurs are supporting each other. It seems like everybody wants to tear each other down. And it's just like, you can actually play the game to get everything you want. Your clients can get everything they want. Your competitors can get everything that they want, and we can all win together. There's a way to play the game without that scarcity mindset.
Yeah, 100%. And the world is so big, right? And if you niche down and you say, well, I'm unique and I want to appeal to people that were maybe they were like me 5 years ago, or they were like me 10 years ago. That's such a unique ask that you're differentiated in the marketplace just from that standpoint.
100%.
You know, being authentic, you know, again, that's not a woo-woo thing. It's the most tactical marketing advantage that you can have, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of fakeness in the world. So just being real, authentic, having some connection to who you are and where you came from is important these days, because the online world, you know, people are still learning the online world, to be honest. And so you have to kind of have emotional connection. You have to have some trust. You have to have some authority built up. And then when you start to understand how these things play together, you can reverse engineer. I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but you can reverse engineer the process to control what I call the 2 buying windows. You can control the perception of your prospects from when they become a prospect into a lead, and you can control the perception to convert them from a lead into a sale. It doesn't do you any good to fake this, because once they become a sale, if the inside, we were talking about the book cover thing. It's like, if you have the prettiest book and they open it up and it's crap inside, you're going to get spotted very quickly, you know? And you see that on Instagram a lot. You know, I saw some gal the other day that faked an entire week at Coachella. She just decided to Photoshop using green screen that she was at Coachella all week. And it was like, the whole thing was fake. And those things get exposed very, very quickly and make you look very, very bad.
I love that. I had a friend, he asked me this question, and it's one of the, I put it into these, we call them thought experiments, but they're mind expanding questions that you ask yourself. And his example of this is, what would it take for you to have your customers for 100 years? Right. So it's, if you're a coach or a consultant or a service provider, how can you grow with your customers? So instead of say, hey, oh yeah, I don't want a transaction, I want a relationship. Well, how can you continue that relationship indefinitely? And that really made me think like, well, that means it's not a week's worth of content or 8-week program or an 8-year program. What would a 100-year program look like?
Yeah.
And the only thing that could possibly ever be is that you and your business grows with your customer.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that brings up a couple of thoughts. Number one is the average Fortune 500 company these days. I think the lifespan is less than 50 years that it even makes it. So if a Fortune 500 company can't make it 100 years, that's a very thought-provoking question on how you're going to make it 100 years. The other thing that I see a lot, especially personal brands and smaller businesses that are trying to make it in this game, a lot of them use the hero's journey kind of as their main backstory. Well, the end of the hero's journey, you've arrived. And so if your hero's journey is on kind of your about page and you've arrived, there's nothing to follow. There's nothing to keep your audience curious about what you're working towards next. And so it's a mistake, a tactical mistake, to kind of use that as the main framework of your about story, to say that, oh, I had a mortgage company and then I went through this experience and I lost a whole bunch of money and I spent a couple $100,000 on courses and now I've arrived and I'm magically have achieved everything in my life.
Mike is
why would I continue watching that TV show if I know the ending, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that, because for that personal avatar framing, if we can connect to a big purpose and a big mission, something that's bigger than our product or our service or brand or a business, we can say, that's who I was. This is who I am. Hey, you want to be like me, but hey, follow me along this journey as we change the world, as I change my life and we change the world. And like, that's,
yeah. And I think we're both friends with Zach Babcock, and like his underlying mission, he's trying to change the world by lowering the recidivism. I can never say that word. The recidivism rate. Like, is that the right way to say it?
People going back to prison.
People going back to prison, right? He's trying to get it under 9%, and he's actively making moves to get into prisons with his content and help prisoners so that when they get out of prison, they don't go back. Yeah. For me, it was, the Association for Mental Health and Well-Being for Entrepreneurs. I want to eliminate unnecessary suffering and expense and provide on-demand support for people that feel like they're in crisis mode. And because this game can be those moments, I've had moments where I had to sell my car to pay my team. I've had moments where I completely lost all of my stuff and couldn't see hope, really, like, how am I going to make it out of this mess? And it's not an easy game to play. And so, there's somebody out there that is desperately in need of a little bit of help. And that's why, like you mentioned, is like the easiest business model in the world is to just help somebody do something that you did 5 years ago. Yeah. It's like, I figured this thing out and I show people how to figure this thing out faster than it took me.
That's cool. And and there's so much kind of false fanciness in the world. And so part of the end hype philosophy is like, I don't know that business really has to be more complicated than that,
you even said the avatar thing is like, I get I wouldn't say pissed off. It's more just irritated, because I get irritated because I fell for these illusions so many times in my career. So I'm not irritated at the marketplace. It's going to do what it does. But I get irritated when I see things that are just like these client avatar things that you see everywhere.
Yeah.
I've seen 30-page client avatar exercises, and they're
Ridiculous.
getting, is it Debbie in Chicago with 2 kids and blonde hair? And almost none of that matters to attracting your ideal client. It's
Yeah.
like
Demographic information. It's like, what, like, why is that helping you paint a picture better in your mind? You know, what's really great? What does this person believe to be true?
yep.
What
And,
is,
and
what is their goal?
yeah, I would say 100%. And it's like, I do believe that that's the point of the exercises. A lot of times those basic ones is trying to help the business owner, the entrepreneur, shift their focus to their clients instead of themselves. But it's like, what problem are they having? Are they in the right stage that you can help them with? And are they the right personality type for you? Because attracting the wrong personality type for you and your business is a painful experience in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I want to, this is just a little, it's a little thing for me. I want to do business with people I like. I mean,
Yep.
If it's my business, like, why not? There's plenty of people in the world. I just do business with people that I like. And if I set that as a goal, it really sets a pretty strong gate for, who I'm talking to and whether.
And that's why it's so important to understand, are you making decisions because you need the money and the sale? And if that's your highest value structure, you're going to make a lot of mistakes like I did. You know, does this feel good? Do I like this person? Do they have a problem I can actually help with? I was taking on clients for the money, and they not only had a problem I couldn't even help them with, or I was faking that I could help them with it or something, like I was like, oh, I'll figure that out. And then they were the wrong personality type. They weren't at the right stage of business. And then the whole thing got really weird and awkward. And then not only do I not feel good about it because I'm not actually helping them, they don't feel good about it. And so then it leads to negative reviews and feelings of guilt or shame or whatever you want to hold on to. And you can eliminate that all up front with exactly what you said. It's just like one simple thing. It's like, does this person have a problem I can help with, and do I like them? And if you narrow it down to something like that, you're going to have a lot more success in this game.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in our world where it's word of mouth at scale, right? So if you want to not spend a fortune on ads, the best way to do it is to deliver a service that people share out and say like, hey, Mike's the man. He unraveled the Gordian knot for me, the unsolvable problem. He solved it for me. And then that's just another, $50, $500, or another uncomfortable conversation that you don't have to, engage with.
I think that's why Amazon is the company they are today, because their entire focus is customer based. It's like, what is the experience we're delivering for the customer? And they have a little bit of a success.
That's amazing. Have you seen like a big change in the last year of businesses that like people are starting, or like new? I mean, everybody has mobility issues, and there's a big shift to online, but I keep seeing a couple of the same business models pop up. And I just wonder if you had a hot take on that.
I've seen an increase in what I would say are people doing it the wrong way. You get a Facebook friend request and then a direct message to your inbox, and they like a few of your posts, and then next thing you know, it's a pitch. And I'm like, I literally just met you today, and now you're pitching me your products and services. So it seems like I've seen an increase in that. It feels to me like more people are not having the success they want with their online business, and they're maybe buying into some sort of program or something where people are selling them on like, let me show you how to generate leads for your business. But then they're showing them that tactic. Feels to me like the world is still off kilter a little bit, including for myself. My kids have been home for over a year. Things that used to take me 1 hour seem to take me 4 now. It just seems like everything's taking longer. And I feel like I wouldn't say the cream's rising to the top, but it just seems like the people that have their mindset and their foundation set for themselves personally and are able to control their emotions and their reactions to certain things, those are the people that seem to be having success in this market. And maybe the people that are a little off balance mentally, they feel very uneasy, they're more anxious. This environment just seems to have made that worse for them, you know. And it's you know, it's no doubt it's been a weird year. But I don't necessarily see a lot of, and maybe it's just because of my own marketing and stuff, but I don't see a lot of people just hopping in saying, I'm going to try and start a new business. Although I'm sure that's got to be a thing. You know, I saw a stat that, you know, 31% of the workforce has been working from home when they normally wouldn't, and 16% of them are not planning on going back. And so that's a pretty big shift to say that people that a year and a couple months ago that were never working from home, they were in an office, are now would consider themselves working from home full time.
Wow. Yeah, and that's a big shift. I think I did a little piece on a podcast about it's a huge product opportunity market right now. It's like figuring out how to facilitate that and make that shift happen. But I'm seeing a lot of, I think people act from desperation, honestly.
100%.
Either it's extreme boredom, or it's a money issue, or it's that reward system that they used to get from their job.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just an unemployment, but it's people reaching out and using those tactics or building tactic-based businesses. So I'm seeing a huge uptick in drop shippers. And people they're like Amazon FBA. People are dropping $5, $10, $20, $30,000 for a course on Amazon FBA. And I'm like, dude, you just find stuff that people want and you give it to Amazon. They sell it on there. Like, make it more complicated if you want, but there's no.
I've seen that too, and I think you brought up a good point. Is when you get anxious or desperate, or you need the money, I guess that's the easiest way to, you make a ton of bad decisions because you look for the fastest, most expedient thing. And it's just like you're grabbing at straws, so to speak. You know, you're just grasping for the fastest fix to this problem you have.
Yeah.
And this is a hard shift in the beginning, actually. I mean, because we all have to pay the bills. We all have to put food on the table, all those things. But if you could slow down and say, what's the activity that I could repeat over the next 20 years so I don't burn myself out? It's like pumping a well, you know, it's like I'm going to pump the well for a while and no water is going to pour out. So you're not going to see it in the first maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But if you can figure out what those right activities are, eventually you'll start to see the results. And I mean, it's like going into the gym and doing 500 sit-ups today is not going to give me 6-pack abs. It's going to just burn me out. I'm going to be sore as hell. I'm not going to be even able to repeat the day the next day. And this game is, if you're going to play in the entrepreneurial world, you have to realize, number one, there's no arrival. There's no finish line. And number two, you've got to play a game that you can repeat and sustain yourself over time. How do you get to the end of the day and feel more energy than you had at the beginning? And I know this from firsthand experience because I spent nearly a decade burning both ends of the candle all the time. I'm a workhorse. I'm very driven. But eventually, you know, gray hair started coming in. My body started breaking down, and I had to figure out new patterns to sustain myself to last long term, because otherwise I was literally going to die. You know, I was just going to work myself into the grave. But now I have this really long morning routine. I listen to, you know, something that I want to listen to. I walk the dog. I do a little bit of meditation or some yoga. I don't start my day generally before 10 a.m. As far as work. And I also do a much better job today of taking breaks. So I kind of have these 90-minute blocks where, like, I'm going to work as hard and as focused I can on one thing. If you take like Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, or the book, The One Thing, you know, it's just like, I'm going to focus on this till it's done. and then I'm going to take a break. So I kind of work in these 90-minute increments of 90 minutes on, 90 minutes break, 90 minutes on, 90 minutes break. And I found that to be way more beneficial. I'm getting more done, having more success, and way more balance in my personal life.
It's phenomenal. There's a lot of gems in there. So again, if people are listening, you should rewind that little piece, because the time blocking is stuff that we talk about, and there's lots of strategies for that. I love it. The morning routine, I love that, but that's all contributing to something, like you're saying, something that's sustainable, growable, and that's worth living, right?
Well, I didn't know any of this, 10 years ago. I had a couple of crashes, very dark crashes, where I was, thinking about quitting, questioning my own reality. Like, am I good enough? All those things, those dark moments are typically the breakthroughs. But I had one that was really bad, and I just was like, I'm just going to figure out what's going on with me. So I went very deep down, psychology, sociology, neuroscience, how our eyes work. I started figuring all this stuff out because I was trying to sort myself out. I couldn't figure out why I felt so crappy. But I didn't realize this until years later, but how important sleep and rest and not only deep sleep, like your REM sleep, how important that is, but how important it is to get rest for your brain that's non-sleep, like meditation is a good example of that. And nutrition, how I for years, because I was beating myself up over the mortgage loss, I wouldn't allow myself to eat meals sometimes. I felt like internally, like I needed to suffer for that decision or something. And it's this weird, awkward thing that humans do to themselves sometimes when they feel deep shame around something or they don't feel worthy. And nutrition's one of the things that makes your brain actually operate. So it's like, sometimes you get angry or emotional or whatever. It's like, eat a sandwich, man. Like just put something in, because it's almost always, are you sleeping? Are you giving yourself breaks? And nutrition. And we go back to that efficiency thing. It's really, it's a mental mind fuck kind of. It's like you're telling me to become more efficient, I need to take more rest. And the answer is yes. You need to take better care of yourself and get more rest and give yourself more breaks, and you actually become more efficient.
Damn.
But that didn't make sense to my brain for a long, long time. It's just, I was like, I had to see the results before I believed it.
Mike, before we wrap this up, do you have one piece of advice that we can walk away from? I know you've dropped a million gems during our conversation, but you have one final piece of advice.
I would say it's never too late. If stuff's not working, there's somebody out there that's already done what you're trying to do, that it will be glad to help you. We'll be glad to answer questions or guide you to the next step. And it's all next steps. So I would just say, get clear on what you want and really just sit down and think, what do I want? What do I think is the best way for me to get what I want? And that's, the mechanism can be the business or the business model or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then find somebody that's already done what you're trying to do and see in any way, how can I hire them or surround myself with them or find out what are they doing? Because the reality is, if you're not getting the results that you want, then if you're clear on what you want and you're not getting the results, the reality that nobody likes to hear is you're doing things wrong. Like, people like to sugarcoat it. They like to say, well, you're so close. If you're only one tweak away. And I spent a decade saying I was one tweak away. But the reality is, if you're not getting the specific results you say you want, you're doing something wrong. And so you need to find somebody that's already doing what you want to do and stop doing the wrong things and do the right things.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Yeah. Mike, where's the best place for people to find you, follow what you're up to?
I'm on social media, but everybody can find me at my main website, themakeovermaster.com. I would say if you're an entrepreneur and you want to follow my journey, the thing that's pushing my boundaries the most right now, it would be the Association for Mental Health and Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs. But they can find me at the makeovermaster.com, and they can connect with me online if they want to.
It's phenomenal. All right, everybody, here's my call to action. Just like in every episode, if you have one question that, if answered, would take your life and your business to the next level, message me, email me, find me on the street, tell me what it is. I will reach out to my network and I'll bring on an expert like Mike, and we'll chop it up and we'll figure out how to deliver that information to you, right? That's how we come up with the topics, and that's how we make sure we're actually serving you, right? So
it seems so simple. It's like, oh, I just have to ask questions. But that, that we talked about a lot of stuff, Callie. It's like, that was the turning point for me. People always ask me, what was the turning point? It was the day I decided to ask for help. And it was as simple as that. That's when everything changed.
That's the perfect way to close it up. Mike, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for stopping by End Hype. And everybody, you really should catch him. And he didn't make mention, but his podcast is phenomenal. So you should also look for him and take a listen. So he has some phenomenal guests. I was just listening to the episode with Steve Sims, who's always a pleasure. So it's a trip, man. But that's it. Appreciate you. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Callie.